Ciao e benvenuto a tutti. Hello and welcome everyone. Today we will make gnocchi, a type of pasta based on potatoes, and it will be served with this heavenly tomato sauce and then followed by this decadent stuffed and roasted pears. These recipes are full of flavor, color, and aroma, but void of salt, sugar, oil, cholesterol, those things that may be a little bit detrimental to our health. And later, I shall play a tarantella for you so that you can feel like a real Italian while you enjoy your gnocchi. We will start with 4 large potatoes that have been steamed and they have the skin on. They are warm, they're not cold, they're not hot because we need to be able to peel off the potatoes. And the reason that I have 4 potatoes is because I will show you how to make gnocchis in 2 different ways. Those 2 will be for gnocchi the traditional way, which have flour. And these 2 will be gnocchi without flour for those of you who cannot eat flour. So let's start peeling the potatoes. And I want to tell you that gnocchi is a variety of pasta that is made and eaten on the spot, fresh as it comes out of the boiling water. So we will peel these, and you see when they're steamed, they're pretty easy to peel off. The 2 potatoes with flour will feed about 4 people. The 2 potatoes without flour will probably feed 1 or 2 people. We will start by mashing 2 of our potatoes. We want to steam them rather than boil them because we don't want a lot of liquid in them. Otherwise, the gnocchi will lose their shape. They might even disintegrate, and that's an unfortunate thing. So we need it dry. You might even consider baking the potatoes, but steaming them works just fine. Gnocchi can be eaten as a main dish or as a side dish or contorno, and it is, as far as I'm concerned, the perfect comfort food. I will tell you more stories about gnocchi as we make them later on. Right now, we're just preparing the dough, which is made, like I said earlier, mostly with just plain mashed potatoes. You can use russet, you can use other types, but they need to be the potatoes that are on the drier side. I think the russet potatoes work pretty well. We want to make this mashed potatoes here very, very smooth. We don't want any lumps. So this is the part that perhaps is going to take you a little longer, just making sure that it is very, very smooth. And you can tell how without any liquid, this is a very creamy consistency here, and that's exactly what we want. So this I will place in one of these bowls. This is going to be for our mashed potatoes made in the more traditional way, which has flour. Of course, in the even more traditional way, there is sometimes an egg added to this, but we will skip the egg because it's obvious that we are following a plant-based diet. So we're not adding the egg. Now, in this other bowl, we will have the other 2 potatoes, and with these 2 potatoes, I will show you how to make the gnocchi without the flour. Okay, so now here comes a secret. not all potatoes are created equal. So some of them are more watery than others. And if your potato has a lot of water, you will need to use a cheesecloth or a tea towel or something to get as much moisture and water out of them as possible. These particular potatoes that I have today, though, are pretty dry, but I still want to show you how I do it. So I will start with the potatoes that will have no flour. Remember that you don't have to do both. I'm just showing you both because I want you to have two options. Those of you who can have flour, regular white flour, and those of you who cannot have it. So this, I'm going to place these potatoes in the cheesecloth, and we can put it here like this. A friend of mine said that this is the perfect time to get your frustrations out because you can squeeze. You could even pretend that you're squeezing that person that you maybe don't like very much. Just kidding, but that's what my friend said. But it's a very therapeutic, thing because it's fun to squeeze this. And even though it looked very dry, there's a lot of moisture here. So this is great. We want this dough to be as dry as possible, especially for the one that doesn't have the flour, because the flour will absorb some of this moisture here. So look at this. Now we have this dough, which we will set aside in my bowl here for a little while. We will put it right there, and it's just dough. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same with the other potato. Even though I will use flour, I'm still going to take some of that moisture out. And remember, you might have to do it 2 times or maybe 3 times. Again, you want it pretty dry. All right. Some people say that it's good to put this in the refrigerator. Other people don't. Depending on which part of Italy you are, there are different ways of making gnocchi. So I am just showing the way that I learned from my grandmother, who used to make this every Sunday. Okay, so now we are ready to add the flour to these 2 potatoes, and I will show you how we start to incorporate. Now, I have 1 cup of flour here. We may not need all of this flour. We will start by adding about a tablespoon of flour and folding it. Okay, it's a little bit messy, but that's the nature of the pasta here. And I'm going, I remember every Sunday the family getting together, a lot of family members, and my grandmother making these, kids running all over the place, screaming, the adults, like a lot of Italians, they're laughing one minute, they're fighting the next, they love one minute, they hate each other the next minute. And it was just a fun Sunday lunch, and it would run into the afternoon with some, coffee or tea or anything like that for the afternoon snack. And you see how it is taking. Now I'm incorporating the 3rd spoon of flour. And I forgot to tell you that you can condiment, you can add anything that you want to the mashed potatoes. You could add garlic powder, you could add add onion powder. You could add a little bit of nutmeg. If it's not a problem for you, you don't have any food addiction issues and you want to add a little bit of salt, that is okay too. But you want actually the potato to be the center of attention here. Okay, now the fun part starts. We will get little pieces of the dough. We will roll it out like a long string. Then we will cut it in sort of bite sizes. And then comes a little, well, the part that may need a little practice, but it's fun. It's even fun for kids to try. We have to roll it on a fork. So let's go here and look. I'm going to get a piece of the dough, maybe a little bit larger, and just sprinkle a little bit of flour here, because if not, it might get stuck in here. So it doesn't need a lot, but I'm gonna do a ball and I will start rolling it. So I want to mention again that the amount of flour that you will need to add depends greatly on the kind of potato that you have. You want something really dry, and if not, you want to squeeze that squeeze that liquid out. Okay, so this is about the size. It could be a little bit smaller, but not bigger than that. And like this. So this is what we will do. And you could even cook it like this, but what makes gnocchi is those little ridges. And actually, those ridges have a purpose. So here is a very fun story. It's a tradition in Argentina and in many of the South American countries, which is that we eat gnocchi the 29th of each month. Why? Well, this is a tradition that has a few explanations, but one, at least in Argentina, that makes sense, because in the beginning of the 20th century, there was a very big influx of Italians that moved to Argentina, and they came to Argentina pretty much with nothing. They worked very hard to build businesses, and they brought their families. So some of these Italians, they were established, they had been here for a few years, and when a new family arrived, then they would invite them for dinner or for lunch on a Sunday or in a weekend when they weren't working. And these families were just starting, so they didn't have a lot of money. They had very little to none. So what happened? Well, the families that had been here longer and had a little bit more prosperity, they placed a bill, like a dollar bill or a peso bill, if we're here in Argentina, under the plate of these families that had just arrived as a way to help them. And I think that is a very touching story, because they didn't want to hand them in the money. Perhaps they would feel bad, but in a way they hid the money under the plate of gnocchis. So the 29th of every month, people in Argentina eat gnocchis as a symbol of prosperity. And I think it was a really interesting story. And it is, most of the times, like I said, it's eaten once a month. And I wanted to show you this very special tradition. We will cook the gnocchis later on, but now I will show you how I make the gnocchi without the flour. Look at these amazing gnocchis. Okay, so now I will show you how to make the gnocchi using the potato dough, but without flour. We will need a piece of wax paper, which we're going to put here. And we will do the same technique of making a little ball of that size and rolling it. That way I don't use the flour that I was using before. And I will show you another technique to get those ridges in the gnocchi. Now, these gnocchi that don't have flour, they do not have to be cooked. The other ones will be cooked. Now, in a little while, Dr. Diego Ponyman, MD, is going to talk to us about the potatoes and how, if they're eaten the way that we're eating them, they really should be of no concern for a diabetic. But we will leave that part to our medical doctor, who will come in a few minutes, all the way from New York. And in the meantime, we will roll this. So, same kind of thing. You can just do a quick, like this, or you could press it harder like this, and then roll it. You see? There's more of a roll there. Either way, it depends what you want to do. That's a quick one. This one I'm going to press it, you see, like that, and then roll it. So while we finish this, I will introduce you to Dr. Diego Ponyman, and he will talk to us about all the benefits of potatoes when they're made without any added fat to them, and hopefully you will learn a lot from him. So here we go. Well, let's keep rolling our gnocchi here while we listen to him. Well, from New York, we have Dr. Diego Ponyman, MD, who is joining us today while we are making this delicious gnocchi. And how are you doing, Dr. Diego Ponyman?
Hola, hi, Gustavo. Listen, that looks incredible. I wish I was there to try some, but listen, we'll do it hopefully when the skies get open anytime soon, okay? But this looks really, really good, eh?
Oh, yes, yes. I promise you that when I go to New York, I'm going to make these myself for you and your family. And
I take that word, eh? So,
okay, I will. I will. So while I'm making them, I thought it would be very interesting if you could talk to us a little bit about the benefits and the power of the potato, since a lot of people think that it's, the potato makes us gain weight, or the potato is not good for diabetics. Could you tell us about the potato while we are making these gnocchis?
Absolutely. Thank you, Gustavo, for the opportunity. I believe I work in New York. I've been a physician for the last 30 years, and I believe on the power of nutrition as medicine. And, if you see populations in the world, populations that have lived so healthier lives, they have lived on carbs, and potato is a starch and it's a carb, and it's the key to good nutrition, to good health, and a good life. And when I talk about potato, I talk as I see you cooking, like as it comes from nature, on its own package. That's the key, Gustavo, not the potato. I always tell people, if you cut the potato, if you peel the potato, wash it, etc., and even cook it, it's fine. But the problem is when people start adding things. And even worse than that is when they start taking these things out, like, chips and all that stuff come from a potato, but they don't resemble a potato. They took everything. They took the fiber, which is key. They took the water. They took the nutrients. So again, the potato, it's a whole food, and that's the key for health and for good health. It's carbs. Because you know what's the problem, Gustavo? The problem is that's what I see in my office all the time. I see diabetes. I see obesity. There's an epidemic. I see high cholesterol, etc. And the problem is not the starch, it's not the carb, the complex carb, but it's, again, when the carb, people start adding the fat, the processed food, the sugar, the simple sugar, and that's the problem. You know what happens? Let's go a little bit more in depth, Gustavo. That fat creates a problem, which is, we in medicine would call it lipotoxicity. It means when that fat goes out of that fat cell and goes into the liver and goes into the pancreas, which is this beautiful organ that makes the insulin. So the problem is not the carb, like the potato. The problem is all the fat that people add to that potato, what we put on the potato, Gustavo, and you know that. And so again, lipotoxicity is what gives you the diet. We know for years now that the diabetes, the high cholesterol, the obesity, it comes from the fat content and the problem in the liver, in the pancreas, in the muscle cell. Once we start taking that fat away, people start, and I can tell you so many examples of patients of mine that have gotten like healthier, that they are now reversed. And again, I will say it again for your audience to listen, reverse. Now we know that diabetes, that disease that we used to tell people is for the rest of your life, now we see reverse on diabetes, and I see it all the time. How? Eating potatoes, eating your rice, eating all that food that you're going to be introducing to us in those amazing classes, webinars, whatever. So again, keep eating potatoes. How? It comes from nature. You can add, vegetables, and I'm sure you're, you can add unprocessed foods. That's the key. Leave or stay away from the fat, added fat, stay away from simple sugar, and that's the secret. That's the secret to success, Gustavo.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ponimas, because what we're making here, for example, doesn't have any butter, doesn't have any eggs, doesn't have any cheese, and doesn't have any vegetable oils. So what you were saying, this potato is going to be consumed as pure as it comes from nature, with nothing added on it.
That potato is going to reverse the diabetes, the obesity, etc. So good luck and all the best, Gustavo.
Thank you so much for joining us all the way from New York. And again, I promise you that I'm going to make these gnocchis for you and your family.
I'll be waiting for that, Gustavo.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Very good. I want to show you both of the gnocchis so that you can see the ones that have flowers, the one that doesn't have flour, and then we're going to move on to making our dessert while the gnocchis rest a little bit before we cook them. Let's see. These are the ones with flour. These are the ones without flour. All right, so now we're going to move on to the decadent pears that are going to be roasted, stuffed and roasted. And what we're going to do is we'll start with 2 pears, and we will cut them right in half. You could do more than 2. I'm just choosing to do 2 today, but you can double this recipe. And I'm going to take some of the meat, as so to speak, out for the seed that I will place out, and I will carve it more, and I will save this and put it in a bowl, because this is going to be part of the stuffing. So let's make a nice little bed here for, this is a very, very juicy pear. Okay, about that much. And while I do this, I can't help but remember this great piece of music that is called 3 Pieces in the Form of a Pear, in the shape of a pear. And you might want to listen to it. It's by a very famous composer called Eric Satie. And he was just very sarcastic, had a very good humor. And he made musical jokes, and one of them was these pieces that are for piano, 4 hands, for 2 performers to play at one piano. And instead of being 3, there's like 6 or 7 pieces actually. So he tricks you there. And then of course in music, we always talk about form, like an ABA form or a 2-part form, or a sonata form, or a concerto form. And he wanted to make a joke and kind of rebel against that kind of concept. And so instead of saying that it was pieces in the form of a sonata, he called it three pieces in the shape of a pear. He was a French composer, and one of his pieces, three pieces also, Gymnopédes, is a very famous, those are very famous pieces of music. So I thought I would tell you about that while I carve this pear, because maybe I will ask my mother, who is also a pianist, to learn the piece, and then she and I could perform it together for you one day in another webinar. So here we go with the 4. What I'm going to do now is place these 4 pears in this baking dish. You can tell how I could easily fit. Well, I don't know if I could easily fit 2 more. Maybe not. I think this is just fine with 4. Of course, if I got a bigger dish, I would. So we'll set these aside, and we're going to make the filling for the pears. On now to the filling for the pears. We have, this is the inside of the pears. We have 1 cup of chopped apples. You might want to get the sweetest types of apples you can have and chop them as small as you can. Then we have 1 cup of cherries. These are compote cherries, so I have boiled them. Or you can use fresh cherries, but they don't have the pit, obviously. And then 1/4 cup of raisins. And we will add to this 1/2 cup of apple juice. This is going to go inside a pan, and we will boil it at a medium heat. And while we boil this, we will stir it occasionally. We will also make the sauce that will go on top of the pears. So let's take this on the stove. Very good. We have our mixture here. This is on medium heat, and we want it, of course, we want this to come to a boil, and then we might reduce the heat a little bit. And I will add 1/3 cup of oats, another 1/2 cup of apple juice, we will put 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon, depending on what you like. If you want to put less, it's okay. If you want to put a little more, it's okay too. And a teaspoon of vanilla as well. And this is going to be our filling for our roasted pears, which will go in the oven at 400 degrees, and it's already preheating. You might need to get this heat on a little bit higher until it starts to boil, and then lower it. So while this is cooking, we're going to make the sauce for the pears. Very good. We will make the sauce, which is very simple, really. This is raspberries, which I have made in puree. And I will add 1/2 cup of apple juice. And maybe we can put just a teaspoon or even less of vanilla. And this is just this is very simple. It's just to make it look a little more elegant and give it a finishing touch, but that's all it is. Very good. This is a high-speed blender, and will check the consistency. If the consistency is too watery, all we have to do is just add a teaspoon of chia seeds and it'll thicken. But I think that this is just about the right consistency that I want. So I used 1 cup of raspberries and I put ½ cup of apple juice. And if it's too watery, you can go ahead and add some about a teaspoon of chia seeds. When it sits there for 10-15 minutes, it will thicken. You might even want to try to run it through the blender one more time. And all right, we're ready to fill our pears. Now, I want to show you that you can have a chunky consistency, or if you prefer a little more less chunky, let's say, you would have chopped this in smaller pieces. But this one is going to be on the chunky side. And I will make sure that each pear has a good amount of all the combination of the raisins, the apples, the cherries, and the oatmeal, which will also add some benefits, health benefits, as we eat this wonderful dessert. And I'm just going to make sure that these pears are touching so that they stay put. Okay, and fill them as much as you like, because it will reduce later on as they cook. And then if you have any leftover, guess what? You can put this in your next morning when you make oatmeal. This makes the perfect topping for oatmeal. Very good. So this goes to the oven at 400. It's going to take about 40 minutes. But while these are cooking, we're going to make our tomato sauce. And then we're going to make the gnocchis. And we're going to eat them. And then we're going to have this done. Very good. On the oven they go. So you can see how I have chopped the mushrooms. Quite small, because that's how I like it, but you can make them, more chunky if you would like. But these are chopped in small pieces, and I will add the 6 cloves of garlic to the carrots and the onions and the bell peppers, and the mushrooms. And we will give it a good stir here. You can tell that it's not getting anything, it's not getting stuck to the pan. It's perfectly fine. It's cooking. Like I said, the onions is what I think gives it a really good flavor, because they release their sugars. And usually we don't need much juice, but if we need to add a little bit of water, if you notice that it's starting to get stuck to the pan, what you can do is save the water from the mushrooms and use some of that. It just gives it a depth of flavor. And all of these little details add up to the final product here. So we will continue. This has been cooking for about 10 minutes now. It may need another 10 or so. In the meantime, we will get the tomatoes ready. What we will need is 3 cups of tomatoes, like chunky, if you want to get those, or not, it doesn't matter. Or you could get fire roasted tomatoes if you can find them easily, or you can make your own, because in my cooking webinar number 1, where I make my grandmother's polenta, I show you how to make your own sauce. You can do that. And then we will add also 1 can or 1.5 cups of tomato sauce that is smooth. So 2 cans of fire roasted tomatoes is 3 cups And that's what we're going to add now. 1 cup. You can see how it's kind of chunky. 2 cups. I would definitely look for salt-free. We are trying to limit the amount of sodium that we ingest. It's always better to add salt. If you use salt, the minute that you start to eat it, because it touches the tip of your tongue, and you don't need a lot of salt. But if the salt is in the food, it gets diluted, and then we add more, and that's how the sodium intake gets higher and higher. So that's 3 cups or 2 cans of fire-roasted tomatoes, and I will add 1 can or 1.5 cups of just more. This is a puree, a little more. It's not so chunky. So this is 1 cup and a half right there. We'll make sure that it's all mixed in. And this is going to be our really yummy, delicious sauce for our gnocchis. And then for those of you that are not eating any dairy cheese, I will show you a faux Parmesan that Chef AJ has in her books. And it's quite a good way to substitute the Parmesan cheese, and we'll do that later. So the last thing is 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. And, sometimes when you cook a lot, you can tell if it is 1 tablespoon or close to it. So what else do we need to add to this? Well, some spices. I don't like to add too many, but certainly I like to add oregano, and I like to add a little bit of garlic powder. And so let's do that. We'll add a couple bay leaves and a little. This is about a tablespoon of either onion or garlic powder, whatever you like. Some of these is according to your likes. I'm using onion powder this time, but sometimes I use garlic powder. Then one of my favorite spices is oregano. I can't think of Italian food without oregano, so a good tablespoon is going to be, I think, just the right amount. And to give it a little depth of flavor here, another one of my favorite spices is smoked paprika. I think I put that on just about everything. And that is all. So we will let this simmer now. That is, it's on high heat, but now I will lower it and I will cover it and let it cook for maybe another 10-15 minutes. I think everything is already cooked. Now, I will tell you what some Italian families do. They get half of this and they put it in the high-speed blender. And then this one, they leave it, and then they mix it. So you have a nice mixture of smooth and chunky. That is up to you. I do it sometimes, whenever I feel inspired. Today, I'm just going to leave it like this. But go ahead and try it. I think you will like it. Of course, you have to take the bay leaf out if you're going to put it in the blender. But okay, very good. So, and lastly, we will add another cup, about a cup of fresh mushrooms. You can use any kind. This is just going to give it a very nice, it's just going to look nice on top of the gnocchis. You'll see when we present this on a plate. Can you skip this? Yes, you can. And if you don't like mushrooms, I think the closest thing you could use is eggplant, but I haven't tried it because I love mushrooms. Mushrooms is the only vegetable that has vitamin D in large amounts, so you really want to eat a lot of mushrooms, especially when they are cooked. When they're cooked, their benefits get multiplied. And we will lower the heat and leave it here. And we will start cooking our gnocchis, which they cook very fast, and I'll show you how. All right, to put on top of our gnocchi, we will make a type of fake Parmesan cheese, and this is nutritional yeast. You can get nutritional yeast that is flavored like cheese, or it could be just regular nutritional yeast. That's 1 cup. And 1 cup of oats. Now, if you want it a little bit closer to Parmesan cheese, then you want to have a little bit more fat. So you will use cashews instead of oats. Because really, if we get down to it, Parmesan cheese is salt and fat. Of course, it has other things, but we crave salt and fat. So, again, if you want it to be a little closer to Parmesan cheese, besides using cashews, you might want to add some salt if you're okay using salt. And then 1 tablespoon of your favorite salt-free spice mixture, which I'm using here. And that's going to go in my cute little blender. And we will make it like that. Oop. So let's see the consistency. I think I'm going to go a few more times to make it a little bit more fine, and it's done. This is totally optional. I just wanted you how to use it, and this is not my recipe. This is our famous and dear Chef AJ's recipe, and but I wanted to show you how you can use this as a little substitute for Parmesan cheese. Okay, very good. Well, guess what? We're finally ready to try the gnocchi. First, I'm going to show you how to serve the gnocchi that is just potato with the sauce on it. We will get a spatula, or if your hands are clean, like mine, that I just cleaned them, and if you're a true Italian, you will just put them with your hands and you can arrange them. But maybe, you know what, it's probably faster to just get them with this spatula. And I think that may be about a serving. And here is our super delicious sauce, which we will generously apply on top. And we will put a little bit of our faux Parmesan. Very good. It's time for the trial. This is a perfect one here. Oh, here. This one is holding quite a lot of sauce. Oh, you guys are going to love me. I know you're going to love me. I know you already love me, but you're going to love me more. And then when I play the music for you, then I'll just be your hero. You guys are going to love this gnocchi. And guess what? You're going to love it even more when you get money, when we put $1 or a $5 or a $20 bill under the plate as you eat. So don't forget that. It's very important that while you're eating the gnocchi, you have some kind of dollar bill underneath the plate. So these are the gnocchi without flour. Now we're going to go to the stove and I will show you how they're cooked, because you throw them in the hot water and then you anxiously wait until those nice little babies come up floating, and then you scoop them out and you put them in the plate hot, you put the sauce, and they're ready to eat. This is pasta that is served in a family. As they're coming out, they're being served, and everybody is just in total joy. Okay, we're going to add to the boiling water the gnocchis that have the flour. And I'm just going to go by the serving here. I don't want to put all of them at once because I don't want them to get all in a big lump. When they start to float up, we pick them up and put them in a serving dish. Don't let them stay too long on the surface. And as the water gets hotter, they will start to float faster. You see, they do keep the shape. And here comes another one. You don't want the water to be too hot either, because they might dissolve. All right. It's just a little bit to cook, for the flour to cook. And what I heard is that when flour is boiled, it's not as hard on the stomach as when flour is baked. So that was interesting. I heard a baker talking about flour. And so this is a pretty healthy, even though it has flour, it's a pretty healthy meal. Now we will add here, we'll put some of our sauce in these, and they're ready to be served. A little bit of the faux parmesan. It's time to try the gnocchis that are made with flour. So let's see how they came out. You can definitely tell the difference between the ones that are potato and these have some flour. They could have gotten a little bit more flour. That is going to be up to you as you get more and more practice and you want to see a little bit more firm gnocchi, or these that are kind of soft. But still, most of the taste, if not all, is of the potato, because there were about 6 tablespoons of flour. That is really not very much for those 2 large potatoes that we had. So I think we're ready to try our dessert, and then we will have some music at the end of the webinar. The pears are done. You can see how there's caramel at the bottom. You might want to put a little bit of like a cup of apple juice at the bottom, which I meant to do, but I forgot. But they're done. And you can see the pear here in the plate. And I got sorbet that is raspberry sorbet, but you can get any kind you like. You can tell that I really like raspberries because I got the raspberry sorbet, and I also, the sauce that I made is raspberry. But that's up to you. And of course, some of us like more ice cream, so we'll put 2 scoops. And now we will drizzle some of that wonderful sauce. And what a wonderful way to end this gnocchi meal. I will get a nice bite of the pear that is soft. Look, it has the cherry, the raisins, everything has, and the apples, and a bite of ice cream. And that looks like the perfect bite. So let's try. Let's see if I can get it on the fork here. All right. Here is the moment of truth. I think it's a perfect combination. The pear with the apple goes just amazing. The cherries with the raisins, and then this sorbet is just incredible. You're going to have to come to see me to get this sorbet, but I'm sure you can get something similar in your neck of the woods. I hope you have, excuse me, I just can't eat this fast enough. I hope you have enjoyed this. Now what we're going to do is I chose a few pieces of music that I think go well with our food for this evening, and I hope that you will enjoy it. So I will see you in my next webinar with the pianist and the chef. So as we start to enjoy our gnocchis today, how could we not start with a traditional Italian tarantella, a very traditional dance that is very fast-paced and has a very interesting story that you will see in the screen as I play it. So as we continue to enjoy our gnocchis, here is another Italian composer, Scarlatti, his sonata in D minor. are a very traditional meal in Argentina, I thought that you would enjoy hearing an Argentine tango by one of the most important tangos composers in history, Astor Piazzolla. And this tango is called I'm Returning to the South. As we get ready to enjoy our dessert, I would like to play for you one of the most beautiful waltzes that Frédéric Francois Chopin wrote, and it is the waltz in A minor. enjoy the dessert of those luscious baked and filled pears, I would like to leave you with a beautiful, calm, reflective piece of music called Gymnopede Number 1 by the French composer Eric Satie. And I hope that you enjoy the dessert, and I hope that you have enjoyed this webinar very much, and that you will let others know about the pianist and the chef.